Hi, hello, namaste. Welcome to another episode of For the Tube, a series where I read books famous on TikTok in the hopes that the algorithm gives my channel a much needed break. This time around, my extremely sweet but slightly unhinged friends at my online book club have chosen to torture me with Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. You know the deal. I suffered through the book, so now you have to suffer through my thoughts. Disclaimer: this review is for your entertainment only. Criticizing this book is not the same as criticizing your choice to read it. If you read this book and enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. Are we good? Good. Let's dive in. This book is set on the fictional continent of Calandra, which is divided into 5 kingdoms: Tura, Ozarth, Lane, Genesis, and Quintus. Our protagonist, Odessa, is from Quintus, while her love interest is from Tura. This place, the Crescent Crossing, is full of treacherous monsters. Other than monsters at sea, this world also has plenty of monsters on land. There's Barry Wolves, which is wolves the size of horses with black, impenetrable scales instead of fur. There's Tarkin, which is like a lion but with pink fur and red, impenetrable scales. Then there are the Grizzers, which are 6 foot tall porcupines with spikes the size of javelins and impenetrable scales. But the most dangerous monster in this world is a crux, a pterosaurus with, you guessed it, impenetrable scales. Basically, all monsters in this world have impenetrable scales. Every few years, the crux migrate from one corner of the continent to the other, destroying all living beings they can get their claws into. To what end? The book doesn't say. And knowing what I know about book 2, it makes even less sense. But getting back to this book, there's also the Woster, a mysterious cult of priests, identifiable by their dark green nails and dark green eyes, without pupils. Their magic is that they can manipulate air, water, and blood. They enforce treaties between various kingdoms through their control over blood magic. It's a soft magic system, in that there's only one rule mentioned. The Wosters need to attune to a specific element before they can manipulate it. Now that you know everything there is to know about this world, let's dive into the story, right after you read this list of trigger warnings provided by the author. The main character, Odessa, is kind of in a contemplative mood for about half a page, and then this happens. 40 feet below, waves crashed against rock. The water spray white as it broke against grey stone. I wanted to jump. I wanted to dive into that ocean blue. I wanted to be unshackled from everyone's expectations for just one God's forsaken moment. Except if I jumped, I'd be late. And if I was late, I'd be in deep shit. That's 2 for 2 for bloated romantasies that open extremely well written only to turn around half a page later and take a dump on my mood. And the reason it annoys me so much is because it means the author can write beautiful, well thought out prose. They just choose not to because they just don't care about the reader. Coming back to the story, Princess Odessa Cross of Quintus is engaged to Banner, her father's general, and get this, 15 years older than her. At the same time, her younger half sister May is engaged to the Turan prince Xavier, who is arriving soon. Odessa is supposed to be getting ready to receive the prince, but she chooses this moment to dive off the cliff. Her fiancé Banner has to be the one to remind her that she is needed in the palace, to which she thinks this. I was just leaving. I held up a hand. I swear. Before or after you heard me riding this way. He arches an eyebrow. You're going to be late. Going to be late. Meaning I wasn't late yet. Phew. It is through Banner that she learns that the Guardian is also going to be in attendance. The Guardian is responsible for Banner's brother's death, so there's some bad blood between them. After complaining that he treats her like a child, she proceeds to treat him like a child. The following 2 paragraphs occur on the same page. Maybe after we are married, he would stop treating me like a child. Though considering the 15-year age difference, I wasn't holding my breath. Banner, I warned. If the Guardian sailed with the Turans, he's here on father's invitation. It is not the time. You can go after him while... Not that Banner has particularly good characterization. He is ill-tempered and cares very little for his extremely young fiancée. Where have I seen that before? That's right. Every romantasy ever. Odessa isn't well liked by her family, particularly by her stepmother Margot. Odessa is also jealous of her half sister May because May gets what Odessa desperately wants, a chance to leave Quentis and explore the world. Where have I seen that before? That's right, every romantasy ever. As Odessa sneaks into the castle, we are given a quick lesson on mythology. Because who would go through the hassle of integrating the lore organically? It was written that the old gods, Ama and Oda, created Calandra's animals as gift to humans, as companions to share in this realm. The mother and father had been proud of their beautiful creations. They'd showered them with praise and glory. But that pride enraged the gods' children, and in a fit of jealousy, the new gods, the six, made animals of their own. The six crafted predators in the image of Calandra's animals, though their variations were far more beautiful, far more powerful, far more deadly. Odessa runs into a Voster, and he tries to give her some sort of message by turning the water on her body into a watery crown above her head. He can talk, he just chooses not to. I get that their eyes are probably creepy, but couldn't she have waited 2 seconds to get an answer out of the Voster? In this entire book, she constantly keeps asking questions, but where she should ask questions, she runs away. While she is running away, she bumps into Margot, who is justifiably angry at her for being late. She helps Odessa get dressed. For some reason, Margot only allows Odessa to wear grays and she colors her ginger hair brown. We learn that the Turan envoy is here at the request of the king to hunt the marrow eels that have been plaguing the Crescent Sea and destroying 2/3 of Quentis's trade ships. The king suggests that these missing shipments could be seen by other kingdoms as an act of war. And the king doesn't want a war on the verge of crux migration. Although in this world there is a Worcester enforced treaty in place, which prevents kings from declaring war against other kings. So I don't know what he's so worried about. Odessa sneaks into the throne room because of course she's late. She notices that there are more guards than usual. 5 Turan warriors show up claiming that they have bested 7 marrow eels and that they have brought their heads as a proof. The Crown Prince Xavier, May's husband-to-be, is amongst the 5 warriors. The party also consists of 2 Worcester priests along with the guardian. The king offers them a large chest of gold coins, but the warriors demand to renegotiate. Remember how The Witcher had the law of surprise? This book has the chain of 7, thus explained. Long ago, before the 5 kingdoms, the lands and the seas were overrun by monsters. To regain control, the ruling lords made a decree. Any warrior who risked their life against the beasts would be granted a prize of their choosing if they returned with the heads of 7 slain females from the species. As with all treaties, the chain of 7 was sealed with Worcester magic. By the chain of 7, the crown prince rejects May and states that he will marry Odessa that evening. Before we continue, let me present an example of the poetic writing in this book. Her, 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 her. Me. The silence built higher and higher and higher. The tension doubled, tripled. The explosion was inevitable. Everyone spends entirely too long gazing at each other until Banner states the obvious. She's not yours to have. Fury crackled off Banner's frame, his body practically vibrating. She's mine. It might have been romantic. No, not romantic. Possessive, but not romantic. And here, Odessa tells us how much she is not like other girls. Queen, that was laughable. I hated wearing shoes and dresses and being trapped indoors. I loathed the monotony of lessons and lectures. I wasn't meant to rule or lead. Politics were boring and regal parties overrated. I was not a queen. This trope is so old and so overused that its beaten body has turned to dust. One of the 2 Worcesters who accompanied the Turans to Quentis turns out to be their high priest. When the king declines for the 4th time to get Odessa married to Xavier, the high priest starts freezing the entire throne room and everyone inside, until the king agrees to the Turan demands. May is pissed, but what can she do? Before Odessa gets married to Xavier, her father tells her that after reaching the Turan capital, she needs to do 2 things. 1. Find a way for the Quentin army to infiltrate the city, and 2. Assassinate the guardian if possible. Why? She doesn't need to know. All she needs to know is that these actions are essential for stopping the Crux migration. Odessa gets ready to get married. In this world, blue is the traditional color for weddings, and white is the traditional color for funerals. Since Odessa doesn't own a blue gown, she gets married in a white gown. When she gets a moment of solitude, she opens up the secret compartment of her almirah and retrieves a journal and a necklace. The necklace is given way too much description for it to not be relevant later. With one final goodbye hug to May, Odessa is ready to get married. So the two royal families take a stroll down to the cathedral to sign a marriage contract in blood. Quite the cultist activity, that one. When the time for vow exchange comes, Odessa speaks her own vows, but the guardian speaks for Xavier. So the contract signing happens, and the king wants to throw a feast in honor of the wedding. But the groom says no thank you and leaves. Actually, the guardian says no thank you on behalf of the groom, and then they leave. For some reason, Xavier refuses to speak. Not that he can't speak, he just refuses to speak. Post wedding, the king spends the entire night cramming vital information down Odessa's throat. The ship is set to sail at dawn, but Odessa shows up at the docks way too early. She spends her time admiring the dead Maroils with impenetrable scales, until the Guardian joins her. He shows off his super healing and super speed, but our strong female heroine is not impressed. I mean, she is, but she's not going to show it to him. A smarter woman would have probably shied away, taken that sensation as the warning it was to watch her mouth. But I was too tired and too hungry, and this man had crawled under my skin. What was he going to do? Kill his princess bride? He leans closer. Of course he does. And she smells him. And he smells of things nobody smells of. His answer was to lean in so close I caught his scent. It was masculine and spicy, like leather and citrus. It was an ocean breeze. It was an ocean breeze and fresh earth and heavy rain. What does that mean? What does masculine and heavy rain smell like? Finally, her family shows up to see her off. They all seem very sad, and Odessa keeps calling it a performance. And I don't understand the point of being this callous, other than to make the protagonist as unlikable as possible. With all the goodbyes done, they sail off. After a long night of taking care of her two mates because they are seasick, Odessa manages to get a few hours of sleep. When she wakes up and goes to the deck, the Guardian is right there to annoy her. He teases her about breaking into her room and then dives off the ship. All signs of a completely well-adjusted man. But Odessa isn't alone for long. Xavier shows up to take the Guardian's place. They exchange pleasant nothings until she asks him when he would bed her. Real subtle Odessa. To his credit, Xavier runs away. A few days pass over the sea. Odessa finally starts wearing pants, much to the horror of her maids. In Quentis, pants are only for men. In Tura, everyone wears pants. It is such a non-issue that becomes an issue for 3 whole pages. This is why this book is longer than 500 pages. Things are repeated and repeated and repeated until they are drilled into the heads of even the most passive readers. Subtleties, storytelling, we don't know them. Mr. Obvious is our only friend. A Maroil has to attack the ship for the author to stop harping on about pants. And of course, Odessa ends up in a life-threatening situation because of not following instructions. Were you expecting something sensible? The Guardian puts his entire crew in danger to save Odessa. And when the danger passes, he scolds her for disobeying his commands. Do you know what she says? What did you say? No, I squared my shoulders, using the last shred of strength, and lifted my chin. I will listen when it's a matter of safety for myself, for other people. I will do my best to stay out of your way. But I will not bend to your every whim. I will not humiliate myself because you deem me insignificant. If you wanted me to stay quiet, then you should have let that Maroil kill me. I am not one of your warriors to lead. I am not your wife to command. So no, we do not have an understanding. Just throw her off the ship, please. That night, Odessa can't sleep because she keeps having nightmares about her encounter with the Maroil. So she goes up on the deck and finds the Guardian and Xavier. She demands that Xavier give her a sword, and while he thinks it through, the Guardian gives her one. Xavier objects, but the Guardian seems to have more authority than him. I'm beginning to think that there's some prince swap type of shenanigan going on here. Like the Guardian is the actual prince who is using Xavier as a cover, I think. 8 days spent on the water and they are about to reach Tura. But before that, Dagger listens. The Guardian gives Odessa a pair of brand new daggers and asks her to draw blood. And as is the case in all of these TikTok books, this is a ritual in humiliation for the leading lady. Thankfully, we do not have to suffer through this for long because they reach the shore. Odessa, and by extension the reader, is introduced to Tilia, a Turan woman who is supposed to be Odessa's companion and guide. Everyone gets a horse and they set off, presumably towards the capital. They cross the thick forest at night because it is safer, and then during the day, they set up camp. As soon as she gets into her tent, the Guardian shows up to harass Odessa for the 15th time in this book. She asks him to leave and he does. So, what was the point of showing up? After a long bath, she wanders through the camp, but then the Guardian starts following her again. The next morning, they are back to dagger training. They train for hours, even after the sunny day changes into a downpour. When the Guardian is your opponent, the fight is not just physical, it's also psychological. You want to be the queen of Tura? Then you must not be afraid. I don't want to be the queen of Tura. The confession came so fast I flinched. He scoffed. So, you'd rather rot in a golden castle, withering away to nothing while your family forgets your existence? You were nothing to them. Your father gave you away without so much as a blink. Your sister put on a show of bidding you goodbye, but I'll wager she's already in your fiance's bed. A man who also let you go without a fight. And don't you have a little brother? Did they even let you say goodbye? That was a mile below the belt. Xavier thinks so too because he instructs the Guardian to back off. The next morning, Xavier and the Guardian depart towards the coast, while the rest of the encampment continues their journey. The day ends up being an arduous trek, and when they settle in for the night, they are immediately attacked by Barry wolves and grizzers. The Guardian comes back to save his people, but specially her, and that makes her feel oh so special. They continue trekking through the kingdom that has a beach next to an evergreen forest, next to a plain, next to rocky terrain, next to mountains. Where are these writers getting their geography lessons? Odessa has been sketching on and off throughout the journey. Tilia notices and tells her to hide the book, and for once she listens. Soon they reach a village built entirely on trees. Wanna guess its name? Trio. I know, so creative. As the queen-to-be, the largest house is given to Odessa. She expects Xavier to join her, but the Guardian shows up instead. He asks her some extremely invasive questions, which she answers with questions of her own. And so in anger, he removes the rope ladder that would let her get off the house, leaving her stranded. With nothing better to do, she goes to sleep. If the Guardian isn't the crown prince in disguise, he is taking a lot of liberties with the queen-to-be. Given the writing style, I'm inclined to believe I'm on the right track, but I don't want to harp on about it, so I'm going to start a counter. She wakes up the next afternoon to find the rope ladder has been restored. Tilia takes her to visit the library. Yeah, because this collection of tree houses has a library. They never make it because the Guardian catches them and drags Odessa for training. And she's bad. Of course she's bad, it's only day 3. The next morning, they train again, but he randomly abandons her mid-training. She goes to the common room and runs into the librarian. Lucky her, I guess. She spends the rest of the day in the library. Amongst its modest collection of books is a book on Quentis. In it, the author speculates that Odessa's father had her mother assassinated, which she adamantly denies. Why do I get the feeling that this is going to be proven true eventually? Tired of reading, she goes to sleep until she is awoken by a Tarkin circling her treehouse. Like an idiot, she opens the front door and steps out into the balcony. But of course, the Guardian is there to save her. Except the Tarkin doesn't attack, so she doesn't need saving. The Guardian returns to his hut, which is right next to Odessa's. He seems to have company, which for some reason makes Odessa jealous. Her next training session is with Tilia, and she seems to be improving. Xavier's father, who is the king of Tura, visits Trio and they hide Odessa away. Curious Odessa is about to make a dumb decision, but the librarian Caitlin stops her. Good. The king, unfortunately, is not there to meet his daughter-in-law, but to ransack the village and burn every book in sight. Odessa had the forethought to hide away her journal, but not the wisdom to wait until the night to check on it. The Guardian catches her with her journal, but he lets her have it for some reason. For a week, she continues to train with Tilia. Then the Guardian is back and he takes over. And Odessa is happy about the humiliation that is to follow. Is this supposed to be the author's attempt at developing their romance? Their training is interrupted when a little girl shows up. And the Guardian is sweet to her and she calls Xavier Papa. What? Xavier confesses that Evie is his daughter and that Evie's mother is dead. He also tells her that he will soon take both of them to Elder for the migration, not the capital. And Odessa is disappointed because she is supposed to spy for her father. Remember? She only reminds us like every 2 lines. Odessa bids Xavier goodnight and climbs up the rope ladder only to find the Guardian in her bed. He asks her charming questions like her body count. Xavier, Evie and Odessa go for a walk, only to run into Luella, Evie's tutor. And here's her description. A woman swept down the path, marching our way. She was beautiful with a slender, willowy figure. Her long brown hair was braided much like mine, the thick plaid draped over her shoulder. She walked with elegance and immediately reminded me of Margot. Straight spine, pinned shoulders with a lifted chin. It wasn't haughty or superior. This woman's posture was simply perfect. I gave her a slight bow. I had never bowed to my own tutors before, but it came automatically, as if Luella's grace demanded the respect. Tell me she is not some princess or queen hiding out in Trio. Sometime later, Odessa learns from her maid Brielle that the king has been amassing a militia and that a lot of men from Trio have gone missing. Odessa decides that this is the perfect time to run away, since everyone who knows her face is somehow conveniently absent from Trio. To her luck, around this time, a merchant arrives with supplies. As he is leaving Trio, Brielle, dressed as Odessa, asks the merchant to take her maid along. He agrees for a hefty price, which Brielle happily pays. The deception works. The merchant drops her off at Ashmore. There, she goes to a tavern and rents a room. But the moment she walks into said room, the Guardian is there, waiting for her. He's mad at her for sneaking out. Not for leaving, for sneaking out. Why didn't you ask? What? I stammered. Haven't you been granted your every request? If you wanted to explore Ashmore, why didn't you ask? I stared at him, jaw slack and mind whirling. Did you ever stop to think that maybe the door to your cage has always been unlocked, Sparrow? And all you had to do was push it open. She didn't. Maybe because you and everyone in your kingdom go out of your way to show her how much you don't trust her. Maybe it's because you take away the rope ladder every single night so she can't leave her treehouse. Although now that I think about it, that one is probably for her own safety. And so, instead of trying to get any information at all, which is why she snuck out in the first place, she spends the day moping in her room. The next morning, however, she has the good sense to get at least something out of this trip. People refuse to talk to her, so she looks for the library, except the king already burnt it down. And then Barry Wolves attack Ashmore. A Barry Wolf is about to sink its teeth into a woman, but Odessa distracts it. The Guardian immediately materializes to save Odessa, of course. Odessa hides in the tavern, but there she finds a crossbow. So she goes to the first floor and helps the Guardian take down the Barry Wolves. And for once, she is helpful. At night, of course, the Guardian invades her space and sleeps on the floor of her room. As he is drifting off, he talks about Lysa, a disease that turns the blood of monsters from red to green. The next day, they leave on one horse. Now look, one bed I can deal with, but one horse is a pet peeve of mine. A horse can generally carry up to 10 to 15% of its body weight, which is much less than the weight of 2 people, one of whom I'm assuming is huge and bulky because he's a warrior. That much weight would break the horse's spine or his leg. Why do authors keep doing this? And before you tell me that it's okay because it's a fantasy horse, if that was the case, the author should have created a completely different species, like she did with the wolves and the lions. Anyways, they leave Ashmore, but instead of returning to Trio, they take the path to Elder, where Xavier is. On the way, the Guardian and Odessa have what the author considers a tender romantic moment. You decide. He dropped his gaze, meeting mine. I was still cradled against him. But the truth I was terrified to admit, even to myself, was that I didn't want us to move. Unless he tossed me out of this saddle, I was going nowhere. His expression was open and unguarded, utterly consuming, more magnificent than even this Turan scene. He searched my eyes the way I searched his, for answers, salvation, mercy. There was a tether between us. God save us when it snapped. I must have slept through that part where the humiliation and the merciless teasing magic gradually transformed into love. And I'm not saying it can't happen, I'm saying it has to be earned on the page. Getting back to the story, Odessa is given a house just above Xavier's in Elder. Evie takes Odessa to the caves where Luella hides her books and journals. Luella is obviously upset that Odessa has discovered her secret lair. Soon they are joined by the librarian Caitlin, who gives Odessa more books. Luella rushes Odessa and Evie out of the cave before Odessa can ask more questions. I get it, she is annoying. Odessa, for her part, mopes about being stuck. Well, if she didn't keep prying all the time, maybe people would be warmer towards her. They get home and Xavier and the Guardian are both there. The Guardian gifts Odessa a sword and teaches her how to use it. The sword he had given me was elegant yet simple, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. The weapons that May collected were embellished with fancy flourishes and inlaid with jewels. I didn't want or need an extravagant sword. Could you be more not like other girls? They spend a week training, and by that I mean Odessa ogling at the Guardian between bouts of humiliation. At least Luella is smart enough to move everything out of the cave in case Odessa shows up, which she does. The Guardian offers to take her to Trio to get her horse, which she enthusiastically agrees to. They take Evie too. On the way, the Guardian tells Odessa more about Lysa, that it spreads through the bite of an infected animal, that he has it, that every king in Calandra knows about it but refuses to do anything about it. Of course, they are attacked by another pair of monsters, Tarkins this time. One distracts the Guardian while the other goes for Odessa. It injures her, but the Guardian takes care of it before it can go for the kill. While she is healing, the High Priest performs some sort of magic on the Guardian. When she asks, he tells her that he was siphoning Lysa out of the Guardian. Makes perfect sense. The man with green eyes and green nails is helping you get rid of an infection that turns your blood green. Odessa offers to investigate about Lysa, and for some reason the Guardian agrees. Scouts have found the dead Tarkin's den not far from Trio. The Guardian goes to investigate and Odessa tags along. I'm not entirely sure why he lets her. On the way, it is established through dialogue that Lysa doesn't spread through saliva, only bite. And in case it wasn't abundantly clear to the one person who was half reading the book, the author spells it out. The Guardian can get physical with his wife. Now, what was the reason to give this information other than to establish the obvious? In the cave, they find 3 dead cubs and one who's barely alive. Odessa wants to keep it as a pet. The Guardian allows it, but only after testing its blood. Thankfully, it's red. He asks her to promise him that she would kill him if the Lysa ever took over. She agrees. He gets so sentimental that he tells her his real name, Ransom. What kind of a name is that? It takes her a few days to nurse the pup back to health, but once that is done, she is ready to be on the road again. This time, they visit a nearby village where Ransom introduces Odessa as the future queen for the very first time. They talk to the blacksmith in hopes of finding information about a dead lionwick infested with Lysa. The blacksmith points them towards a journalist. The journalist, Samuel, turns out to be the same person who wrote the book accusing Odessa's dad of assassinating her mom. He apologizes to her for writing that book and gives her whatever information he remembers. It's not of much use. He also confirms for her that Elisaria actually exists, but the only way to get inside the city is through taking a blood oath. The next morning, they prepare to leave. But the king shows up and burns down Samuel's house. A confrontation ensues between Odessa and the king, after which he grants the Guardian 1 month. For what? We don't know. On the way to Elder, she asks him how he came to be known as the Guardian. He tells her that he killed the person who stole young girls to sell them somewhere else. The person the Guardian killed turns out to be Banner's brother. Yes, the same Banner that Odessa was engaged to before she got married to Xavier. Because main characters need to remain pure white, they are not allowed shades of grey. She notices the leather cuff around the Guardian's arm. The markings on it seem to be some sort of a map. They reach Elder and Odessa runs face first into her husband having a threesome with her maid Jocelyn and a ranger known as Vander. It gives her existential crisis for a bit until the Guardian shows up to comfort her. She confesses that she feels relieved. Excerpts from the rest of the chapter. Look at me, Odessa. You are not mine to keep. What if I was yours? What did you do? Who did you exchange vows with, Odessa? Xavier. With my blood, said the Guardian. With my oath spoken. So he drops this bomb on her and leaves. The next morning, Jocelyn comes to see her. She begins to apologize, but Odessa cuts her off. Jocelyn says she wants to go home, and Odessa agrees to her request. She also shares with Jocelyn all the information that she is willing to share with her father. The information is as follows. She failed to find the capital. The king is amassing a militia. She sends Jocelyn packing and goes looking for her real husband. Odessa is pissed off, which she has every right to be. The Guardian tells her that he married her to set her free. Once he is dead from Lysa, which he says won't be long, she can live her life on her own terms. But he also tells her that most students believe that Xavier is the prince. So why she would be free after his death is beyond my understanding. Their conversation ends in a kiss, and that is all it takes for Odessa to forgive the deception. After all this, he leaves for a week. I mean, he's gone for weeks at a time. When did their love magically develop? Being available in case Odessa wants to talk is just too much of a beta move for the Guardian. How Odessa fell in love with a man who is gone for days at a time, I may never know. When he does eventually come back, they go for a long walk and he is more receptive to her questions this time. In fact, these are all the twists that get revealed in a matter of 40 pages. Xavier was sleeping with Odessa's maid Jocelyn. Odessa is actually married to the Guardian and he is the real crown prince. Evie is the Guardian's sister, not Xavier's daughter, but Xavier loves her like a daughter. Ransom's mother was having an affair, for which his father tried to kill her. The Guardian knows that Odessa's father can break the magical treaty holding their marriage together by killing all Wosters. They finally make it to her room, ready to get all down and dirty, but Barry Wolves attack. Usually they attack in groups of 4 to 6, but this time their number reaches 30. The Guardian and the other Rangers, including Xavier, try to fend off the attack. He tells her to stay back, but of course she jumps into the thick of it and immediately freezes. She does eventually help a couple of people, but then the leader of the Werewolf pack decides that Odessa needs to be done. It sends about half a dozen wolves in her direction while the rest of the pack tries to escape. Fortunately, there is a Woster in town and he single-handedly saves her from about 6 werewolves. The Guardian decides to give chase to the pack. Again, he is gone for about a week. Every time he leaves, how does he show up exactly 1 week later? Is that the timeline they decide that if they find it in 1 week, well and good, otherwise let the werewolf attack? I do not care. While the Guardian is chasing the pack, Odessa roams through the village and realizes that the infected monsters may not be as mindless as previously thought. She has been putting together a map of Tura. And a couple of chapters ago, she hired Samuel the journalist to improve upon her map. He presents the new map to Odessa. She hides away the map just in time for the Guardian to show up. But he is not alone. The Woster has come with him, and the moment the Woster touches Odessa, she folds up in pain. The Guardian draws a sword, forcing him to leave Odessa alone. The Woster has his suspicions about her, but before they can discuss what those are, Luella rushes in, yelling that Evie is missing. They find her on the very next page. So I'm willing to believe that this scene was only inserted to keep Odessa's powers a secret until the second or the third book. With Evie found, the Guardian comes to talk to Odessa about the Woster, and that is where she learns that she is the only one who can feel their magic. They also hypothesize that monsters are drawn to her. She wants to test that theory, but he refuses. She puts up mock resistance, and then this happens. Tell me you want to leave and I'll take you back to Roslo myself. No, I whispered. Good, I have no desire to live in Quintus. What? I leaned away. You are mine. His hands dove into my hair, fingers threading through my curls. Even if we are a kingdom apart, you are mine. But I'd rather not be a kingdom apart. They finally consummate their marriage for 5 whole pages. Eventually, they get to talking. Odessa is convinced that Lysa started in the capital, and the Guardian is convinced that it did not. Xavier comes knocking with the news that Barry wolves have been spotted somewhere close by. While the Guardian gets dressed, Xavier confirms for Odessa that killing the infected beasts is not working. The boys leave to deal with the Barry wolves, and Odessa takes a leisurely stroll across Elder. As she is passing by the infirmary, a man jumps her and tries to strangle her. She saves herself, but his blood is green. Odessa is immediately taken to the infirmary, where Tilia cares for her. Luella visits. She seems to know an awful lot about the after effects of strangulation. That is when Odessa realizes that Luella is actually Ramsey's wife, the Guardian and Evie's mother. Luella presents her sad backstory. Like, am I supposed to feel sad for a woman who cheated on her husband? So she did not get married to the love of her life. Big deal. Does that justify cheating on a man who has infinitely more power in the relationship? Before Odessa can ask follow-up questions, the Guardian is back, angrier than she has ever seen. But Mother Luella is able to talk him down. After he is calm, Luella leaves and he comforts Odessa. He confesses that Xavier's stepfather was the first person he killed. But Ransom is not a bad person. He was only trying to foil an assassination attempt. Odessa reads a lot as she recovers. One day, she is reading through a journal when she comes across the description of a plant with green berries, cave ginger. She thinks it's important, so I'm mentioning it in the summary. Through talking to Xavier and the Guardian, Odessa draws the conclusion that the king has been infecting his militia with Lysa in hopes of recreating the Guardian. Caitlin is involved somehow, but she has been silenced with a blood oath. As a workaround, she has been giving Odessa books, hoping that she will make the connections herself. And Odessa does. Luella barges in with a jar full of cave ginger berries. That is all the hint Odessa needs to figure out that Luella is the one who created Lysa. Unknowingly. Genius! Luella confesses that she was trying to distill the essence of monsters into a Captain America-like serum. She did give it to the Guardian, but it was the Barry Wolf's bite that converted the serum into an infection. Luella suspects that the king has been injecting his militia with blood from infected animals. And it is not working. The Guardian decides that he is going to go to the capital and urge his father to stop running the tests. He takes Odessa outside the borders of Elder to explain his reasons, though he wouldn't leave for another 3 days. The night before he is supposed to leave, an army descends on Elder, the king's army. Xavier welcomes them inside, but the king has brought friends. Banner, who is here to take back his fiancée. No, not Odessa, Brielle. And Jocelyn, who was a spy acting as Odessa's maid. Finally, the king finds Luella. Imagine my surprise when the book confirms that Luella is her actual name. If she was using her real name all this time, how did she remain hidden for 4 years? The king tries to strangle her, and there's nothing the Guardian can do because he took a blood oath to not go against his king. But Odessa is quick to raise a sword against the king and forces him to let go of Luella. Except the king slaps the sword out of her hand and hands her over to the Worcester. That is when a crux shows up. The crux starts picking and eating people at random. Chaos ensues. While the soldiers fight the monster, Odessa finds Evie and tries to take her to safety. But Banner is in her way. He has convinced himself that Odessa's life will avenge his brother. She fights him and she's actually holding her own until Xavier comes to save Evie and gets a knife in his belly from Banner. But Odessa immediately manages to avenge Xavier. The Guardian is fighting the crux and Odessa is taking Evie to safety. But when she makes it to the tunnel, the Worcester is there waiting for her. The last chapter is the aftermath of the fight narrated through the Guardian's point of view. The dead crux transforms into a woman with hair like Odessa's. Xavier is hanging by a thread, but Luella is gone. And that's the end. So that was my review of Shield of Sparrows. Surprisingly, I did not hate it as much as I thought. Not an enjoyable experience, but not an infuriating one either. Safe to say, this book will not contribute towards my villain arc, and that's the nicest thing I can say about it. Fun fact, the word monster was used in this book 359 times. If you like this video, check out other videos on my channel. And if you're a cool girl, check out my series Kitabi Keeda. It is full of books written by indie authors and it will be worth your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you again, hopefully in 3 weeks, with an indie review. Talk soon.